It is the day to welcome the newly crowned king, Louis XVI, and his lovely Austrian wife to the city of Paris. And at the head of the welcome party is a promising young law student, Maximilien Robespierre.
When Robespierre was a schoolboy, the king visited the college and Robespierre gave a Latin address to the king. So he actually spoke to Louis XVI when he was a teenager.
As Robespierre respectfully delivers his Latin soliloquy, the king hardly notices the boy. But years later, their fates will again intertwine under very different, much darker circumstances.
It was one of these rituals that take place in every school, and yet, of course, it was so charged with irony, because here you had the young Robespierre reading this discourse in honor of the man he would later kill.
For now, the welcome is warm and the flattery sincere. The visit from the royals may have won the hearts of the people, but their minds are leaning increasingly in an entirely different direction. Since the Middle Ages, European society had been broken into three distinct classes, dictated by birth. There was a great divide between the wealth of the nobility and the clergy and the poverty of the peasants. Then, at the blossoming of the 18th century, reason and science began to challenge this age-old tradition. Swept up on a current of innovation and new literature, Paris now radiates as the philosophical center of the world. The city pulses with a great flourishing of knowledge, a shining beacon of possibility. It is the age of enlightenment.
The Enlightenment is a movement which says don't trust authority, don't trust anything that you've been told by anybody else at all. Think it out for yourself, test it for yourself.
In old regime Europe, you were told what to think. You were given information from above by your rulers, by your priests. And so the idea that you could map out all of human knowledge and then have access to it was revolutionary.
In elite salons across Paris, aristocrats gather to discuss Enlightenment authors and the burgeoning age of reason. Voltaire, Rousseau, fresh voices who champion liberty, control of one's own destiny, and above all, equality. The passion for this new literature is highest among the upper class, but as Enlightenment ideas take root at all levels of society, the drive for equality will begin to threaten the aristocratic way of life.
What makes it dangerous is it means you will eventually question, why are aristocrats the ones with privilege? Can't we change the world to make it a better place? Isn't progress possible? All of that will eventually undermine the idea that monarchy is natural, aristocracy is natural, and hierarchy is natural.
To see Enlightenment ideals in action, one need only look across the Atlantic, where the Americans are fighting for freedom from France's old nemesis, Great Britain. Young King Louis wants revenge for his grandfather's defeats, and he sees an opportunity in the American War of Independence. Louis commits to the cause a total of 2,000 million livres, enough to feed and house 7 million French citizens for a year. His investment would mark the beginning of financial collapse for France.
America bankrupts France, in effect, because the debt which the French monarchy incurs in order to fight the American War of Independence turns out to be absolutely crucial in the financial situation of the French monarchy, because the French monarchy cannot pay those debts.
While Louis sends money and troops across the Atlantic, Marie is busy incurring debts of her own. Life at Versailles is a never-ending routine of archaic ritual and formality. There are ceremonies for the waking of the king and queen, for dressing, for dining, for retiring to bed. To keep herself amused amidst the ritual drudgery, Marie Antoinette presides over a parade of increasingly outrageous fashions.
Marie was obsessed with fashion, especially these towering hairdos that were several feet high, that took hours and hours in the construction. and fit all sorts of ornaments and fruits, and to many people they seemed like an obscenity. They came to represent what was all that was wrong with her and with Versailles and that culture.
Marie occupies herself with court gossip, gambling, and the staging of plays. As her expenses accumulate, Marie earns the nickname Madame Deficit.
Marie is given the name Madame Deficit as the country is in economic chaos, and she continues to spend as if nothing's happened on dresses and jewels and shoes, and she was the Imelda Marcos of her day.
Of all the debts Marie incurs, the greatest is what she owes her country, an heir to the throne. In the 7 years since their marriage, Louis and Marie have yet to produce a child. Marie finds herself in an increasingly humiliating position.
The job of the Queen is to produce a male heir. It's absolutely essential for there to be a son. And during that time, people criticize, people are dissatisfied, people say the king should never have married this Austrian archduchess, and now she can't even produce an heir to the throne.
Marie is desperate. Louis's appetite for food is unquestioned, but sex is clearly not on the menu.
Il y a toute une correspondance entre l'ambassadeur d'Autriche et
Marie-Thérèse, the mother of Marie Antoinette, questioned, if a girl as gorgeous as my daughter cannot get him going, then what is going on?
Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Louis XVI and his young wife were not able to conceive for 7 years. This cast a pall on the beginning of his reign, and because his hobby as a locksmith was well known, there were all sorts of salacious songs circulating to the effect that the locksmith was having a hard time finding the keyhole.
Louis's disinterest in sex is seen as a lack of bravado as a king. Finally, after years of frustration and pressure from the court, Louis is diagnosed with a treatable condition called phimosis.
Louis had a deformity that made arousal extremely painful. Therefore, there was no consummation until there was a surgical procedure that could correct this, but he was scared to death to have it, and it took years for him to agree to have it. And when he finally did, voila.
After a simple surgery, the couple is able to have their first child, Marie-Thérèse. But there is no easy fix for the years of damage to Marie's image. Since the early 1780s, libelles have circulated throughout the country, pornographic satire of the king and queen. Obscene pamphlets mock Louis's impotence and portray Marie as a promiscuous harlot in a debauched and decadent court. The people's view of the monarchy sours as conditions in the countryside worsen. After a succession of bad harvests, deregulation has raised the cost of flour, leading to a shortage of the very heart of the French diet, bread. But the hardships naturally stop at the gates of Versailles. As the royals continue to live in extravagance, complaints are committed to paper. One charge is leveled directly at the royal court.
Do you know why there are so many needy people? It is because your luxurious existence devours in one day the substance of 1,000 men.
The man behind this charge? The same young man who just a few years earlier regaled the king and queen after their coronation, Maximilien Robespierre. In Robespierre, the people will soon gain a voice, calling for liberty, equality, for revolution. Versailles in the late 1700s is an oasis of extravagance, surrounded by a land in despair. And with an uncertain king at the helm, France is charting a course for disaster. After 19 years of marriage, Louis has sired 4 children. Yet as a king, he remains impotent. In an attempt to demonstrate leadership, Louis dabbles in financial reforms. But his misguided interfering burdens the poor with heavy taxes, while the nobility pay hardly at all. With the economy in ruins and the people restless, it seems as if even the heavens are angry, smiting France with the most bitterly cold winter in 90 years.
If ever God intervened to make a situation worse, the summer of 1788 and the spring of 1789 is a moment when that happens. By the